The first picture here is from a participant who has been a heroin addict, but started with alcohol. So this person actually, in his account, he's talked in great details. It was a 3-hour-long interview of him saying everything, how it all started, what he's going through now, and the journey was quite intense. He relapsed 16 times, overdosed twice, and he's right now in a much better place. So with this picture, what he's trying to say is there was a time when he had a lot of problems at home, and his way of escaping that was taking substance. So as you can see in the highlighted bit, I wanted to be in my own world. And at that time, the best option for me was getting high. I really wouldn't have known how to face it. So it was like, it's better my eyes are shut. I don't see anything. I stay isolated. So his intention was really about staying isolated, not face the problem, unable to solve the problem. They're just, going into substance to help them escape. And now, after getting clean, I'm starting to learn small things, because at that time I was seeing all these things. I was trying to run away from life. I didn't want to face it. I got hooked to drugs at a very young age, and I didn't know the basic facts of life itself. And now slowly he's starting to learn. After hitting that rock bottom, he's lifting himself up, and it is a struggle. It's a very long struggle. But what he's trying to show is why he started, and how he didn't plan on becoming an addict. Let me tell you this: none of these participants said at the beginning, I started using thinking that yes, I'll become an addict. No, they never planned that. They never thought things would go out of control till it was really, really late. Manav here talks about a complete darkness. It's a picture that was taken in this river, Brahmaputra in Assam, and he was just sitting there, and there was complete darkness in this evening, and there was this boat with some lights. There are people in the boat, and he could see it from afar. And that was a moment for him to think that I have come to this point where I have left my friends. My family doesn't trust me anymore. I'm chucked out of my house, my own house. And what he did throughout his journey is he kept selecting friends based on the substance they possessed. So he would say, I hung out with these people who had alcohol, and then all those people who never used any substance, who would not use any substance, he stopped speaking to them. He stopped having contact with them. And then gradually he moved on to a different substance, say weed, and then stopped, talking to this other group of people. So his friendship was based on the substance that they had. And at one point he did realize that none of these so-called friends cared anything about him or what was happening to him. Nothing. It was all about the substance. So he was at this point where he lost his friends, he's lost his family, and he had just one hope, and that was to get himself up and go to rehab by his own. So here he says, nothing seems to please me, completely blank. I had a photo of that time, so there's the picture. So if I sit somewhere, I couldn't see anything. I felt life, there's nothing in my life, because I was actually doing nothing. I just wake up in the morning, get intoxicated, sleep at night. Get intoxicated till my eyes aren't closed, and then sleep. So that was his condition at one point. And you can see this is not what he wanted. Even at that point of time, it's not what he wanted, but there was no option. The withdrawals were so strong. And most of these participants told us, we didn't know about how the withdrawals looked like. The previous participant, James, he had a half-body paralysis. He didn't have any control. And at that point, to deal with his withdrawals, he kept using. He didn't want to use anymore, but he just didn't know what to do, and he kept using. In the next one, I want to just talk very briefly about this case study of this girl who started with alcohol. And, for the first time, she went clubbing and she drank a lot of alcohol. And then she went more often to these places and she started drinking. Mind you, she's not talking about the place being wrong. It's about the choices she made there. She started drinking, but it didn't stop there. Like Manav before, Smita also continued to choose friends based on the substance. In the second picture, you will see the railway tracks. At one point, from the decision to just go clubbing, she came to a point where she visited railway stations because drug dealers were around there. And that's where she would procure her drugs, she would use. She was scared of needles, but she started using that even. At one point, she even had a gun in her hand and she went to rob a house. And it was the first time she held a gun. It was the first time, it's not something she's done before. And because she was so desperate for the drug, she was so desperate for the money that she went to that extent. And of course, she didn't go through it, and she went to jail. She was caught by the police. She was beaten up in the jail. After all of this, she got pregnant and then had a lot of problems there. A lot of things happened that was beyond her control. She didn't plan any of this when she started that first point of using alcohol. None of these were planned. And as she went ahead, she saw herself having almost no control over what she wants to do next. She faces withdrawal, she went to rehab, she comes back, and then there's this small urge, and then she'll go like, okay, let me use it once. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, I'll use it once and I'll tell myself not to take the second dose. Through these interviews, they're trying to say that, hey, even I thought I was in control. Even I thought that, hey, it's okay to have a little bit. It's okay to just try a bit of heroin. But they could never stop after that. So on the left-hand side, I'll just read this out. Within 3 years, I moved from alcohol to weeds to dendrite, whitener, and to nitrogen tablets. I used all sorts of substances, but I did not become an addict, or so I thought. Soon I found myself choosing company based on the substance they were using. I was scared of needles, but after injecting heroin, my addiction overtook my fear. It took 3 days of use for me to realize that I don't want to continue using, but I had no choice. The withdrawals were horrific. So here she's saying that she used for 3 days and that was enough to get her addicted to it. She wanted to stop, but she started facing withdrawals, so she continued to use. My identity, my persona was completely altered by substances. Soon I found myself in the company of dangerous people, robbed for money with a gun in my hand, spent nights in lockup, beaten up black and blue. You might use substance thinking you're in control. Trust me, you only realize how wrong you were when you're already deep in trouble. So choose to say no before it's too late. So this is a message she's trying to give, to say that I didn't start thinking that, okay, I'm going to be an addict. No, it was more one pleasure after the other, to the point where she had no control over it. On the right-hand side, it's from a young person who has successfully resisted substance use, and it's trying to say that this delusion that you have when you use the substance, it is a delusion. It is not reality, because you are only running away from your problem and you're just closing your eyes to it. But what you have to really do is, coming down to the next picture, very nicely metaphorically explaining here that the green grass will grow into the mud if you just give it some time, rather than escape and use substance. In that case, the problem will remain as it is. It's not going to change. It's just making you escape, and things are getting worse and worse while you're escaping the problem. So this is what he's trying to say, that he had faced quite a lot of problems in his life, and he actually used it for a while. He just didn't, it was through the support of his mother that he could stop, and without any force. This is not to say that, you know, he was beaten up, he was punished. No, his mother sat him and explained all of this, that ultimately it is your choice. I cannot stop you from going anywhere. You will have some way or the other to use it, but this is what you're going to do to yourself. The rest is your decision. So through that sort of support, he was able to stop using after 3 months of smoking cannabis. On the left-hand side, the next poster talks about how he wants to carry the message of what he's learned from his story. And he says, one of the most difficult truths that I face in my recovery is that I'm powerless over others' addiction, as I'm powerless over mine. I cannot force anyone to stop using, nor can I take away their loneliness and pain. I can only set an example by showing others how I'm enjoying my life living clean. I have to allow them to see how I'm facing my reality, despite how painful it is, and growing to be a better person daily without the use of any substance. So he is a participant who have used, and years of using and relapsing several times. He was successful in sort of giving a lesson to himself, but he understands that if he goes about saying that, hey, don't use substance, something bad would happen, they're not going to listen unless you really see examples. And even if you see examples, you never know what kind of decision you're going to make. So he's trying to give a message here, but at the same time saying that ultimately all I can do is share my story, and if that inspires you to stop doing what I did before, then that's his success. And on the right hand side, this is a participant who was dependent on marijuana, and what he said is, so many regrets are not worth the high. So he shared pictures of his father's shirt and his mom's scarf and the desktop. So what he's saying is he raised his hand on his dad. His mom cried and tried to kill herself because of his addiction. His mom collected money to go to Hajj, and he used that money to buy a computer system for himself. And it was all while he was intoxicated and high. And he feels that all this thing that he's done all his life up to now, he just feels that all these have just built up into regrets and nothing else. And, you know, that high that he had all this while is just not worth it. The next is on the left hand side. I found this very moving. I didn't know about this before. So he talks about how one gets access to these drugs. So he begins by saying the drug addict too is dealing with his or her withdrawals, trying best to get rid of physical and mental pain caused by the withdrawals. The addict will try to entice you into drugs by first offering it for free, and once addicted will make you pay for the drugs, which they can afford no more. Instead of giving in to curiosity and peer pressure, say no to drugs and help the addict come out of his addiction. So, what's happening here is a vicious circle of problem. I don't know if some of you might have already experienced it, where you look up to your seniors and you see them using some sort of substance, and you feel like wanting to belong to that group. Yeah. And then you go to them, and when you're offered a drug or alcohol, you feel like you are part of that group. What happened to this participant is just the same. And when he was young, his seniors in school were using cocaine, and he was offered that, but he didn't know why that was happening. The seniors were actually speaking to him and, you know, trying to get him involved so that he pays for the substance and they too get to use it. And that was not known to him till he himself started doing that. He said he's responsible for making many people addicts, even introducing heroin to one of a remote village in Assam. He's the one who introduced it because he didn't have the money. And when he didn't have the money, what he did is made others addicted to it so that they struggle to get the money. And when he gets the substance, he gets to use it too. And from this, he obviously has a lot of regrets from what he's done, but he's trying his best to communicate this message to others and make others realize that sometimes you just think it's cool. Sometimes you just think that, oh, you know, I can just try once, this person is offering, but that person who's offering has his or her own intention and his or her withdrawals that they're dealing with. And so that's why in this poster he says, say no to drugs and help the addict come out of his addiction rather than you joining that group. On the right hand side, a very powerful message by this woman who was an alcoholic and then started using party drugs. So for her, she was speaking to the alcohol itself, saying, I decided not to be powerless over you anymore. I go and buy you. Do you come to buy me? I go in search of you. You don't come in search of me. If I shut myself in the room, would you come searching for me? You have an attitude. You had power over me, not anymore. So she's trying to claim her power back from these substances because she saw how powerless that made her over time. This is the moment she basically reenacted that moment when she broke the bottle at that point of time when she decided, I will not be powerless with you. Here, the post on the left is from a young man, 15 years of age, who talks about what he does when he feels stressed. So he says that when his mood is off, when he feels stressed, why go to substance? I might as well take my guitar and start playing it. Invest that time on my hobby and my passion. Okay, so he's trying to say your hobby or passion can support you in more ways than you think. When times get hard, why not use your passion to refresh your mind rather than resort to substances? On the right, again from a resisting group, she talks about her time when I'm just giving a background of her story. Like she had this a family problem with her stepmom. She felt like she wasn't accepted in the house. A lot of other problems were happening, and there were times that she would sit alone in a railway station just looking out and trying to think if I should escape, if I should run away. So there were a lot of things that was going on, and she felt like at one point, what if I use substance? I don't have to face all of this. But she stopped herself from it only because she knew what her friends were going through because of the use of substance. She had a friend who were in recovery. She also read about it a lot. She actually put that effort to read about what happens with substance use. Now, I'm telling you this from a perspective of someone who is successfully resisted. But most of the young people who were in recovery, who are addicts in recovery, they have said that they never knew what it was going to do to them, their lives, and their physical and mental health. So the last two posters here are from again from the resisting group, and what they're trying to say here is when you are using substance, you are affecting more than just yourself. So in the first poster, on the left poster, they say that there's this beautiful village where she lives in, and it's all full of greenery. But the peace and tranquil of the day gives way to clinging and smashing of bottles at night. We women can't go out of our houses after dusk. They tease, they pull our clothes, and there is no one to stop them. It's become a little village diseased by an epidemic of addiction. Make the right choice. It influences more than just your own life. So you don't realize all of these things. You don't realize what your addiction might be doing to other people around you. On the right-hand side, this is a poster by, again, an Assamese woman, 15 years, who's trying to say that her elder brother, who she was very close to, had to go to rehab because of his cocaine addiction. And she was depressed, but also hopeful that we could live those joyful days once again. Things will change for the better, and she had that hope, but it won't be the same. And a very important bond is being lost because of her brother's addiction. Again, someone who started with just alcohol and weed and then ended up using heroin, to the point where, when he was asked by his family, he showed desire to quit. He showed strong desire to quit. When he was talked about going to rehab, he did go, but his urges were too strong. He kept relapsing again and again, and the consequences were faced by his sister, by his whole family. What message are these young people giving to you? I'm just bringing them all together. And like I said, this is not about preaching. This is about what they have told you. And I'm communicating that message to you so that you have this information when that decision point comes. First, deal with the problems. Don't escape from them. Substance use can lead to a lot of regrets, things that you don't think would happen when you start using. Addicts will try to entice you into drugs for their own benefits. This is something that I personally got to know for the first time, that the dealers themselves might be someone who's dealing with withdrawals and trying to get you to use it just so that they can benefit out of it. Be more powerful than the substance. Don't let the substance control you. Now, once you're in it, that control goes away from you, and you don't realize, you just think. The next point, you only think you're in control when you use, but actually it's something else that's controlling you, which is why a lot of our recovering addicts have said that at one point I had to give control of my life to someone else. Use your passion to deal with the stress. So when you're stressed, when your mood is off, look for things that you're really passionate about, be it music, be it art, be it sports, be it just, going for a walk, cycling, many things that you can do when you're stressed. Your addiction affects more lives than you can imagine. So as you could see in the last two posters, it's not just you, it's your neighborhood, your family, most importantly, and even your friends could be affected by your addiction without your knowledge. We developed this model, not going to go to details into this model because the animation will tell you what this is about. So what we did is to bring all these different stories together and see what these journeys look like, the different stages, the phases that one goes through, from not using to casual use to addiction into recovery. And what we did is we changed this model into something that looked like this. It's the same thing, but in an illustration. And we took this to our participants, 4 of our participants, 2 males and 2 females, and asked them to trace their journey, took their feedback, and ultimately came up with this final map showing the different stages and phases of addiction and recovery. Now, this was then converted into an animation, and this is where I will end my presentation. I will show the animation, which was based on interview quotes, what they said in their interviews, and we brought that into a narration just to show how each stage and each phase looked like, the thoughts, the feelings that they went through in these different phases. I followed the older guys.
I liked their lifestyle, wanted to be like them. So I started hanging out with them and doing things they did, using drugs, roaming around. I soon felt cool. From erase X to weed to hard drugs, I continued to experiment, explore. And then at one point, I found myself unable to stop using. My life started spinning out of control. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Substances were having a bad effect on my health and also my relationships, so I tried to quit on my own. I managed to stop using several times. However, the cravings were too strong, and I always started using again soon, particularly when I met a problem in my life or friends who I had substance with before. Everything felt hopeless.